Hello, classmates and professor. My name is Juan Pena, and this is my persuasive speech for Com 101. And then this is my audience, socially distanced. Okay, so today's topic is on the federal minimum wage. Should we raise it? Should we not raise it? Today I'm gonna persuade you that we should raise it. Okay, have you ever noticed how low the federal minimum wage is? Most of us will answer yes to that question before, just as fast as the question was asked. Let me ask you another question. Isn't it crazy how prices and the cost of living are going up, yet the federal minimum wage remains the same? Of course it is. Today I will persuade my audience, you guys, that the federal minimum wage should be raised by discussing the federal minimum wage, how it hasn't changed for over a decade, the increase of prices for daily goods and the cost of living, and how we simply cannot afford to continue living on the current federal minimum wage. Okay, so the federal minimum wage we are accustomed to has been the same low amount for well over a decade. According to an article published on CNN.com in 2019, the current level, which is $7.25, was set in 2009. So looking at the evidence logically, of course, one can assume, such as myself, that the government thinks that things aren't changing, that things are going to stay the same, which is crazy because things could change in the blink of an eye, yet the federal minimum wage has not changed for the past 11 years. Okay, according to another article published by History.com in 2019, since the first federal minimum wage was set in 1938, it has been raised 22 times by 12 different presidents. Between 1938 and 2009, the federal minimum wage has changed 21 times for an average of a little over every 3 years. Okay, so besides the fact that the federal minimum wage has been the same for 11 years, something to keep in mind is that we are about to go into our third president, and yet the federal minimum wage has remained the same. Okay, so with the federal minimum wage now discussed, and how it hasn't been changed for the past 11 years, well over a decade, it is important to also discuss the increase in prices of daily goods and the cost of living in America, just to get a grasp of how bad things are. Okay. So, as mentioned earlier, the price of daily goods are increasing. According to an article published by Investopedia.com in 2019, in fact, the prices for daily goods have increased considerably since 1998, when the statistics first were starting being recorded, above and beyond what we can account for by inflation, giving the dollar much less buying power than it had just 20 years ago. So daily goods aren't getting cheaper and are increasing faster than we can imagine. So with the same article mentioned above, it also states that according to the most recent data collected by the BLS, which is current as of January 2019, what would have cost $20 in 1999 now costs nearly $31 as of 2020. Okay, so in theory, if you think about it, people should be making more money, to accommodate those increase in prices, yet they are not. Okay, so as mentioned earlier, and as we will continue mentioning throughout the speech, the cost of living in America is rising. According to an article published on GoBankingRates.com in 2018, the cost of living in America has climbed 14% over the last 3 years. So to truly get a grasp of just how bad this is, I'm going to use an interesting, yet common sense comparison so you could visualize it. So a 14% increase in the cost of living in America, 0% increase in the federal minimum wage. It's crazy, right? Mm-hmm. So, according to an article published on BusinessInsider.com in 2019, the national median price for a one-bedroom apartment as of June 2019 was $1,216, a 1.5% increase year to date. So let's look at the facts here. A 1.5% increase doesn't seem like a lot, but like a lot of things in life, it does add up. One thing to keep in mind from the source above is that this is the price for a 1-bedroom apartment. Not even a house, not even a condo, just a 1-bedroom apartment. So let's just ask ourselves a simple question. How on earth is someone supposed to be able to afford these constant increases in prices, and cost of goods, cost of living, yet the federal minimum wage is not changing? It's uncomprehendable. Okay. So in a chart shown on the departmentofnumbers.com, it could be seen that the real gross rent history for America in 2009, which is the last time the federal minimum wage was changed, was $9.60. Okay. So as we can see right here highlighted, the real gross rent history for the U.S. in 2009 was $9.60. So what does real gross rent mean? Real gross rent means is the contractual rent plus the average cost of monthly utilities. Okay, so that was $9.60 rent and utilities as of 2009. The 1,216 national median price for the 1-bedroom apartment, as mentioned earlier in 2019, doesn't even consider the average cost of monthly utilities. That's just the contractual rent that is being taken into consideration. The $300 increase in rent from 2009 to 2019 can clearly be seen. It's almost $300. So you want to know something crazy, and like I said, it's going to keep getting mentioned. Something crazy and equally annoying to myself, you guys, and probably all of America: the federal minimum wage continues staying the same and does not change. So now that the numbers behind the increase in the prices of daily goods and the cost of living in America have been discussed, it is important to make it known that we simply cannot afford to keep living on the current federal minimum wage of $7.25. Okay, let's look at some other photos. So this is a chart that shows the unadjusted wage since I believe 1940, which was around the time it was first set, 1938. So we would see an increase, of course. And then if you look right here, sorry guys, so since around 2009, it has stayed constant for the unadjusted wage. For the inflation adjusted wage, it actually continues to decrease. So unrelated to the cost of living, top reasons Americans aren't saving more money. We all have to save, it's very important. So I have a high cost of living is the third highest reason, 18%. On an also related note, I have a low salary is another reason they don't save money. I'm living paycheck to paycheck, another reason I don't save money. Okay, so as I mentioned, Americans simply cannot afford to be living on the current federal minimum wage. So the next few stats are going to be credible through myself. So I am in the financial industry, so I do a lot of these numbers day to day. So if we take 725 times 2080, which is the amount of work hours in a full-time year for a full-time employee, we get gross income of $15,080. So like I said, with those numbers obtained by keeping in mind that there are 2,080 work hours in a year for a full-time employee. So let's divide that number, 15,080, by 12 months. After doing the math, a full-time employee on the federal minimum wage would end up making $1,257. That, of course, is gross. It is before tax, not even taking into consideration tax and everything that is deducted. So with the national median for rent for a 1-bedroom apartment being $1,216, you mean to tell me that we can continue surviving on a monthly income of $1,257, which is what we'd get when we take the multiplication, do the math. We simply cannot continue affording living on the current federal minimum wage. So Without stating the obvious, of course, that's not even taking other costs into consideration, you know? It's not taking into consideration, you know, car expenses, emergency expenses, things like that, you know, things of that nature, things that happen in life, you know, that we need to take into account. So, as I keep mentioning, we just simply cannot afford to keep living on the federal minimum wage. So, in conclusion, if it hasn't been abundantly clear by the things I have stated and my stance, the federal minimum wage needs to be raised. Today, by discussing the federal minimum wage, how it hasn't changed for over a decade since 2009, the increase of prices in the cost of goods and the cost of living, and how we simply cannot continue to keep living on the current federal minimum wage, it becomes abundantly clear, like I said, that the federal minimum wage needs to be raised. You know, we cannot continue living like this, you know. So times are constantly changing, like I said, and it's time that the federal minimum wage changes with it and is raised. Okay. Thank you.